Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corn Productions. My co-host Stacie here to talk about Sullivan's Crossing, Season 1, Episode 5, Pressure Drop. The episode's description reads as follows. Maggie makes a difficult decision after Sully lets his temper get the best of him. The episode was written by John Galligan. Also, he wrote the last episode, and the episode was directed by Gail Harvey. This is her second stint on this series. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out, and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening on one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please subscribe. You can also head over to my YouTube channel, Corn Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to our channel. Shoutouts this week, one for Skylar Anderson. He agreed with us that last week was a little strange. It felt like two very different stories, two different episodes. And Ashley Wright said that he listens to us for our goops.
Yeah, well,
and
if we're good for anything.
Yes, if at least at the very least we are entertaining in that respect.
I'll take it.
I'm pretty sure that Ashley did not actually mean that as a serious comment, but if you did, I'll whatever. Any way that I can entertain someone, I will take, for sure. All right, so Stacie, your thoughts on this week's episode.
All right, so we got some more background on our characters. We'll keep continuing forward in that motion. I'm feeling like this show is getting very predictable, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's one of those ones that I feel like I know what's going to happen, and I appreciate it. You know, it's like comfort food.
I mean, that's what the show basically is. It's a comfort show.
It's a comfort show.
It's not aspiring to be high art.
I'm okay that, I know what's happening. I feel like I know what's happening so much more so than Maggie does most of the time.
Right. You have the plot, whereas she does not.
She drops the plot a lot. We get returns this episode of Peter Outerbridge as Walter Lancaster and another appearance by Linda Boyd as Maggie's mom, Phoebe. No Lola or Rafe this episode.
I noticed that.
Yeah, although they are both credited. I think everybody else popped up. No Finn, but he's not in every episode anyways.
Right.
And we had some high drama as we ended this episode. Things are left a little precarious going forward.
Yeah. I kind of feel like this is perhaps the strongest episode of the season. It's definitely a step up from last week. It's a more coherent story.
Right.
We get some background on Sully and Maggie and what happened there. And, not necessarily all of it, but we definitely get more of the picture. And that's what I've been looking for. So I definitely think this was a very strong episode. Perhaps the best of the season so far. I'm not sure that I can think of another episode that was as strong as this.
Yeah, and the end of this episode marks the halfway point for this season.
Yeah.
So we're halfway through this season 1 story.
Yep. All right. So anything else that we want to say before getting into it?
Let's dive in.
All right. The episode begins with Maggie practicing her deposition, and we see flashbacks, which includes who I believe is Faith.
Yes.
Correct?
We got another shot of Faith Shavs, who plays an unnamed nurse in the background working on Kevin Markiff. Maggie did give us 2 names of nurses, but neither of them were pointing towards Faith. We got a nurse Patty and a nurse Miriam. But Faith doesn't have a name, so we'll just call her Nurse Faith.
Yeah, that works for me.
Making her second appearance now in the series.
Yep. And she's...
So shout out to Faith.
Yes.
I know you're listening, and we appreciate you.
Absolutely. Yes, Faith is a very active supporter of ours, for sure. And she's in this deposition that she's practicing. She's talking about the incident concerning Kevin Markham, which is the inciting incident of the series.
Yes, the son of Claire Markiff, who is played by Shelley Thompson,
who of course we talked to at one point.
Yes.
Her mom calls. Her mom calls, and she's going to
interrupting her studying these notes,
and she's going to the Save the Whales fundraiser that apparently they go to every year.
The annual Save the Whales fundraiser, and I thought this was funny because just last week I talked about how Maggie must be familiar with fundraiser banquets because of her mom, right? And how much did I nail that we're talking about a fundraiser now,
right?
And again, I definitely feel like we're leading to the place where we're going to eventually have a fundraiser for Sullivan's Crossing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, that has to be where we're going.
That's going to be the season finale where they save Sullivan's Crossing. Hopefully we're not, spoiling anything. I mean, we don't know anything.
Don't know. We're in the U.S., we've only
Right.
seen these episodes. We don't have access to the rest of the season, which, although some of our listeners do and have watched it already, so thanks for not spoiling us.
Right. So if
I
that
said that funny, but
yeah, we got the idea. But I mean, so if that ends up being how the season ends, then we are just brilliant that way.
yeah. Well, I watch a lot of television, so I might be a little better at predicting these things.
Right, you got a lot of television
some of the more
literacy.
casual viewers. I was just at my mother's house over the weekend, and we turned on Fall of the House of Usher, which
Okay.
I haven't watched yet. We watched.
I've heard of it, but
we watched the first two episodes. Myself and my sister and my mother, and my sister's watched it already. Right, so we're at the beginning of the second episode, setting up what this episode's about, and there was a line of dialogue, and I went, "Oh, so this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen, that's gonna happen, and that's gonna happen." And she goes, "Wow, Stacie, you're good. That's exactly what happens." I was like, "Yeah, I just, she goes, I didn't see it coming at all when she first watched it." And I was like, I watch too much TV. Like, this is what I do. I analyze TV. So.
Right. This is now basically one of your jobs. Okay, so she suggests that she can come home at least for this, but Maggie says she wouldn't feel comfortable coming home even if she had the time. And I'm not sure, what is she doing that she doesn't have the time? I mean, I guess preparing for this deposition.
For the deposition.
But is that all?
I don't think she's got a whole lot else going on.
All right. Her mother mentions that Andrew talked about their missing dinner date, and she hopes that Maggie is not pushing people away again. And now that's a very curious line of dialogue. Exactly when did she push people away before? Is that something we're going to get into, or is that something that's just a random thing that they threw out there?
Well, I do get the feeling that she doesn't like having phone conversations. She always rushes everybody off the phone.
You know what? I also don't like having phone conversations, so I definitely sympathize. Maggie says she feels like she's walking into an ambush. Her mother says she doesn't have to do it alone. And Maggie says that she has Ed and a Frank, and her mother finishes with Sully with very clear disdain.
Yeah, she definitely takes an opportunity to insult Sully before they end this call.
Right, suggesting that he can't be counted on and that he will never change. And they end up hanging up. Maggie is in deep thoughts, and credits. When we come back from the credits, Maggie is out for a run. She's going to Shandon's. And by the way, I don't know, do you know the song that was playing here?
I didn't catch it, no.
No? Well, I happen to really like that song.
Yeah, there's a lot of great music on the
absolutely.
soundtrack of the series.
She goes to the Shandon's, the place that, people eat, where Rob...
that place where people eat?
Yeah.
Shandon's Diner.
Yeah, Shandon's Diner.
You got the word Shandon's this week, but then you didn't know what to do with it.
So, I mean, I guess that's a halfway improvement, like 50%. Okay, so she runs into Sydney. We didn't see her at all last week. Actually, no, I think we didn't see her at all last week.
She was still at the baseball tournament last week.
They talk about what happened in her absence, all the drama stuff. And apparently Sydney broke it off with Raph because he was getting too needy.
Yeah, and it's funny because the last we heard, which was right before she left with Finn, was she was going to think about a dinner date.
Right. And that was complete BS.
Apparently she didn't think too hard because she's called it off. I wonder if she's told him that she's called it off.
No. When she said that meant absolutely nothing. That was just a thing to try to, let him down easy and give him comfort for a moment instead of just being straight and just keeping things as it was. Like, it wasn't a good place, but at the same time, it is what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I got a feeling they're going to end up together, though.
Maybe. Cal is in and out of the scene. Yeah, and he's acting weird.
He was,
distant.
Of course, sitting alone in the background. He's always in Shandon's, and he's always alone.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he has a weird relationship with this place.
Yes, he's sitting in the corner with brooding melancholy. Sydney reveals that Finn got kicked out of the baseball game, and Rob doesn't know. And it's very clear that she doesn't want him to know.
Yeah, she's trying to keep it from him.
Did she specifically tell Maggie not to say anything?
She said, I'm trying to keep it from him. She didn't say, hey, promise me you won't tell him. But she did express, I am trying to keep it from him.
This is one of those situations where I have sympathy for absolutely nobody. I don't end up agreeing with anybody's actions in this situation at all. And it starts right here with Sydney. Okay, Finn is Rob's son.
Right.
he needs to know about this.
Yeah, absolutely. She should have told him.
Right. So that's the original wrong in this this episode, as far as that situation is concerned. Like, he has a right to know. This is something that he has to deal with as a parent.
Right.
So,
but also, I'm going to say Rob should have been there.
Right.
I said it about 1,000 times last week. He should have been there. Right. He should not have put her in this position where she's the one trying to figure out what to do about it.
So in your opinion...
But she should have told him as soon as they got back.
In your opinion, that was the original wrong.
Of course.
This is another wrong following up on that.
Right. He should have been there.
Okay.
So what we know about the incident is that he was kicked out of the tournament for fighting. And Sid says that the other kid must have said something to provoke Finn, but she has no idea what it was. My guess is that he was making fun of Finn for having his aunt at the father-son tournament and not his dad.
Oh.
I think that's the root of all of this, is Rob wasn't there. Or perhaps it was something about the fact that his mother is dead. Because, kids are cruel.
Yes. Kids are like sharks. If they sense they can hurt you, they will go after you. Like sharks, they sense blood, they go after you. Kids, if they sense they can hurt you, they will absolutely go after you.
Yeah, and
I know that from experience because I was an unusually sensitive kid.
How guilty do you think Rob's gonna feel if he finds out that the reason his son got kicked out is because he wasn't there and that was the catalyst of this fight?
And maybe Sydney actually knows that. Maybe she actually knows what actually happened and she's just not saying.
Because she's trying to protect Rob?
Possibly.
Maybe.
We'll see. Okay, so
Rob comes out.
Yep.
And gives Maggie a giant bag of food to bring home to Frank, who's on his way home from the hospital. And I don't think it's awkward at all to carry that giant bag of food on a run. Not
to mention, when she actually ends up giving that bag to Frank, it's like this little box.
Yeah, they take out one thing. It looks like there's at least 2 or 3 other boxes in the bag.
Right. So, is she, like, holding out on Frank here? Like, did she eat the other 2 boxes? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, it was this giant bag of food, and I was like, oh, that should be fun to carry back on your run across town that we've established is way too far than it seems like it should be. Like
30 miles. Maybe there's, like, some kind of teleportation system that we don't know about. Maybe this is secretly a science fiction show, and this is actually in our wheelhouse.
They gotta take Faraway Tree.
Well, there you go.
They're right down the street.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So Frank is coming home from the hospital, and we cut to Frank sitting outside on the stoop, in one of those chairs outside the store with Edna. Sully is helping him out, and they're exchanging some banter. Maggie ends up bringing back the one box of the breakfast. Like, we don't see her carrying the bag, so again, I'm asking...
The bag was there, but they just set it down quickly. One thing came out of it, and we never got back to the bag.
Gotcha. See, I thought that she only gave him the one box, and that was it. Okay, so Maggie blames herself for what happened to Frank, saying she should have said something about Chelsea's emotional state.
Yeah.
Again, I went over last week why I think this is, like, kind of not right to blame herself for that situation.
So she blames herself for what happened with Chelsea, but here's what I have to say about that. Did Chelsea being there really have any impact on the shooting? Like, would that not have still played out similarly if Chelsea wasn't with them?
I mean, maybe if Chelsea wasn't with them, they wouldn't have gone to the shooting range, but I mean, I don't think we can know what they were planning to do without her.
I mean, isn't it equally believable that they would have still been drinking in the woods with the gun? And, I mean, Frank still would have wandered upon them. He wasn't looking for Chelsea. Right. He was releasing an animal.
Right. So, yeah, I think this is some pretty crazy level of trying to, guilt yourself. It's taking on way too much. But I think it comes down to something that Walter ends up saying to her. The key to happiness is control. And, what Frank ends up saying is here, you can't control everything.
Right.
So I think that that's part of the reason why she feels so guilty is because she feels that she should have been in control of all this, even though that's ridiculous and insane, really, when it comes down to it.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
And throughout this scene, we learned that the doctor says Frank needs to eat better, like Rob's flaxseed muffins. He doesn't want to eat better. He's real happy to receive this breakfast from Rob. And everybody is kind of really catering to him, right? Because he just got home from the hospital.
Yeah, he's really milking the whole being shot
He's definitely milking it. He has people running favors for him, getting him drinks, hot sauce. He sends Frank to his house, or Sully to his house to get a pillow. I don't know why I want to call Sully Frank so bad.
Yeah, you do that almost every week.
I do. In my notes, I don't think I've ever actually once I did actually do it, but constantly I want to call him Frank. And I don't know why. Did he play Frank in something? I'd have to check his IMDb again.
I don't think so, but he might have. I mean, he's been in a lot of things, so it's possible. So, all right. So basically, she ends up having the conversation with Frank about if you spend your life trying to control everything, you won't get a chance to see where life wants to take you, which is the exact opposite philosophy of Walter, her stepdad.
They're giving her two very different opinions. And, she was saying how she had such anxiety, working on him in the field, because he's thanking her, right? Like, hey, you helped save my life, doing that whole credit card trick. And she's just like, I don't know. I wasn't feeling good about that. I'm not used to being out in the wild and not having an operating room. And he said, that shows what a good doctor you really are. Like you know your stuff. You can handle it. And she doesn't think Mrs. Markiff would agree, because her head is all wrapped around this lawsuit. Right. I wonder how Shelley Thompson feels. Claire Markiff herself. Do you think Maggie's doctoring skills are good enough?
I mean, I certainly think so. If I get shot and she manages to patch me up with a credit card, then I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So Maggie goes into the store to get some hot sauce for Frank. Edna is crying and describing how they ended up getting to Sullivan's Crossing in the first place. And we're dealing with the emotional ramifications of what happened to Frank here. We're like, last week my complaint was that we didn't really deal with that. Yeah. And this week we are, I'm glad to see that we didn't just drop that story entirely, that we actually dealt with it somewhat in this episode.
Right. We're going back to that refrigerator again, which she's still calling the broken fridge. So
didn't they fix that last week?
Again? I don't know. There was stuff in it again. But the broken sign was still on it, so maybe it's on and off the fridge.
So Cal and Maggie didn't do such a good job after all.
Hey, she's saying how they gave that to Frank, they gave that to Sully when they first came here. They'd only been married a couple months. They've been here a really long time. And she also thanks Maggie for saving Frank. Cal comes in, and Maggie gets a chance to chat with Cal. She asked if she did something or said something to upset him at their dinner. Because remember, their dinner ended quite peculiarly. So I get the impression this is their first time seeing each other and having a chance to talk since then. Because they didn't talk at the diner this morning.
Right, no, they did not. Cal says that no, he has a lot of things on his mind, and she does too, for that matter. And he offers to help with the deposition, so they make plans to meet at the cabin.
To meet in an hour. They do that a lot. Let's meet in 1 hour.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with that, but, whatever.
Every time they get together, it's like, let's meet in an hour.
Yeah, I guess they need to get ready for the... emotion. They have to get themselves in the proper headspace to be hanging around with each other or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And I noticed he put whatever he was buying on his tab. Does anyone ever pay for anything around here?
No wonder Sully's having such money problems. All right, so Sully ends up running into Jackson, who has an unflattering news article that he's reading online suggesting that Sullivan's Crossing, and I have croissant here, which is interesting, isn't safe.
That would be a better thing to call it than what this article did. The article called it Sinister Crossing, talking about Chelsea's kidnapping and Frank's shooting, and basically saying, you don't want to come here for your vacation.
Right. And this seems to agitate Sully, and Jackson says it might explain the cancellations. And Sully is like, well, how do you know about that? And then he's like, never mind. And he is clearly not doing well here mentally at all.
Right. Well, I mean, he needs money, right?
Right.
And you're not going to get that by everybody canceling their summer vacations. This is the one time a year that you should be doing really well.
And he's not doing himself any favors giving all his money to Lola or letting people just take things out of his store without paying.
Right.
So on and so forth.
And, Sully's trying so hard to keep all of these failures from his staff and from his family. And instead of having them work together to find solutions, he just wants to keep this all to himself. And
that goes to men of that generation. is that they, keep everything bottled in as opposed to expressing their emotions and expressing their problems. Because for a guy like Sully, admitting that you have a problem is a sign of weakness. And that's a problem in society in general. People believe that showing weakness is, I'm sorry, admitting that there's a problem is weakness. And I disagree with that. I think it takes a lot of strength to admit that you have a problem that you can't deal with on your own. Mm-hmm. And Sully needs to be, getting that into his mind.
We talk about on the show that comes up a lot, how everybody needs to communicate with each other and they might get somewhere. Well, I think that's the case here too. Like if these people start communicating with each other, they might see some solutions. Mm-hmm. And admitting that you need help is important step.
Yes, absolutely.
But he doesn't even want Jackson to know that there's cancellations. Of course, Jackson knows there's cancellations. He works in the store. He answers the phone and takes reservations.
Right.
Like, you can't do everything yourself. You have a staff. Absolutely. You got to let them in.
Mm-hmm. So Cal and Maggie practice, and Cal advises her to keep her answers short, not volunteering any more information than she needs to. And Cal asks a question, calling her Maggie, and she's insulted, saying, "It's Dr. Sullivan." And Cal tells her not to take the bait. Okay, so you know what's interesting to me about this? I think this is a direct parallel to a scene later with Sully and Walter. He's advising her not to take the bait, not to react emotionally. Mm-hmm. And I think this is advice that Sully could have very much used in a later scene.
Absolutely.
Because Walter, and we'll get to that, was absolutely baiting him to do what he did.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a direct... If that was intentional, then that was really well done, in my mind. But Cal is saying, you don't want to come off as arrogant.
Yeah, he even went as far as telling her to throw all her notes out. Mm. Like, you don't need notes. You're not going to tell your story. You're going to make them work for it.
Right.
Don't give them anything.
Cal's line of questioning leads to suggesting that that what happened was she was running late, so she rushed her exam. And Maggie ends up getting mad, and Cal says, this is what the lawyer's trying to do. That she needs to stay calm. And she reveals that she had panic attacks as a kid in the wake of her parents' divorce. Mm-hmm. And the therapist suggested breathing activities. And yes, that is a way of dealing with anxiety. Breathing activities is one way to do it. Cal suggests that she go to her happy place. And she ends up imagining something.
Yeah, and what she imagines is the lake when she was here as a kid. It's someplace to help her calm herself. And she asks Cal, how'd you learn how to do that?
Right.
And he tells us he learned the technique from Lynn, his wife.
Right. And as soon as that came up, I'm like, the wife's dead. Like, in this scene, I'm like, all right, they're eventually going to reveal that he's not, in fact, still married, that she's dead. I mean, technically, that doesn't mean that they're... I don't know. Would you still consider yourself married if your partner dies?
I mean, there's a word for it. You're widowed.
Right, okay.
They have a whole separate word to describe this.
Right.
But yeah, instead of explaining himself,
right,
he bounces.
Right.
He's like, okay, bye. I got somewhere I gotta be. Instead of being like, oh yeah, my wife, she passed away.
Well,
even saying anything. He's just like, oh, I didn't mean to say that. Bye. He runs away. Well, leaving her thinking that he is married.
Right.
That there is a wife in the picture.
Okay, so two things about that. One, he clearly doesn't want to talk about that.
Right. That's fine, but you can't drop something like that to someone who you're clearly, like, courting.
I mean...
and not explain it.
He's interested in her, and there's a mutual attraction, but at the same time, she's with somebody. So sure. I'm not sure that Cal actually thinks that he has a total chance.
They had a date.
I mean...
he brought wine. It was a date.
Oh, okay. All right, I'm just gonna go along with you on that one. But yes. All right, so he bounces, and Maggie is very clearly confused at this point. But at this point, I'm wondering, are we gonna get this reveal that his wife is dead in this episode, or are we gonna get it at like 2 episodes from now? And to my surprise, we eventually get it here.
Yeah, but Maggie is, yeah, like you said, she's confused. She's just like, oh, you're married. Of course you're married. Like, you're too good not to be married.
Right.
And she feels like a fool now because she thought that there was some chemistry between them.
Mm-hmm.
And now she's maybe thinking that she was imagining that.
Right.
Is what I assume.
So Rob ends up dropping off food to the store.
Yeah, he's doing a delivery of snacks. I'm really confused by this whole scenario. Why is he delivering like whole cases of snacks?
I'm not sure.
I mean, I'm missing the logistics here.
I guess that Sully buys the food and stuff from Rob.
Right, but like whole cases of like commercial snacks.
Right.
Not like things he's prepared at his diner.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand
Maybe he's buying them in bulk for both the diner and the place and they get a discount that way. I don't know. It just felt really weird that he's like, okay, I'm the delivery guy now, delivering snacks.
Well, I mean, this is a town where you have one person handling the ambulance, the fire, and the police. Okay, two.
People, but,
okay, I got
sure.
you.
Yeah. I guess the whole logistics of this town just don't make a lot of sense to me.
Okay, so Edna sees that there's a balance owed, and now we're getting more people starting to understand that there's some serious money problems
she's really confused by this. She's like, we always pay in full. Why? And Rob's just like, it's fine. Sully's good for it. But she's like, this isn't how we do it. Like, why is it different?
Rob says it's no big deal. And then Maggie goes and puts her foot in her mouth, bringing up Finn.
Yeah,
okay.
Asking about Finn.
All right.
How is he doing with being kicked out of that tournament?
Right. Okay, so Maggie does not have any evil intent here. But still, even if she assumes that Rob is eventually going to be informed about the situation, she has no way of knowing whether that's happened yet or not.
Right. She goes, oh, Sydney didn't tell you yet? You mean like since an hour ago when you saw her at the diner?
Right. So she's not malicious, but she is stupid. This is just... You don't do this.
It's part of the course of Maggie not following the plot.
Right.
She seems oblivious so often about what's going on around her.
If there's one thing I've learned in my years, if somebody tells you something, keep it to your damn self. Because even if you don't have bad intentions, just talking about things that other people have said is a bad idea.
Right.
Because you're going to reveal things accidentally. They're going to be pissed. They're going to get pissed off. And then everybody's going to be pissed at you. Right. So the moral of the story is keep your mouth shut about things people tell you. The less talking you do, the better.
Okay.
Not necessarily in a podcast situation, but in life, I think the less talking you do, the better. All right, so he goes off angry. He says it's fine, but it's clearly not.
Yeah.
But all right, so out of the blue, her stepdad ends up arriving.
Yeah, while Maggie and Edna are putting the snacks away.
Yeah, he says he wants to rent a cabin. And Sully suddenly comes in at this opportune time and asks, hey, what's he doing here?
Yeah, very clearly not happy to see Walter.
Right.
And Edna says, we'll set him up in a VIP cabin. And I got the impression that she's not charging him for this. And
again, you have to wonder how Sully is not making any money here because they're giving cabins away on a constant basis.
Yeah, but why aren't they He said, I want to rent a cabin. So rent him a cabin. Don't be like, ooh, we're going to give you the VIP treatment.
Right.
Take his money. He clearly can afford it.
This guy has some, and you need some, so take it. Anyway, and I don't...
Okay, but in this conversation, Sully says he thought all the VIP cabins were rented. So clearly Edna's been keeping secret too. She let Sully think that these were all rented, and she knows they're not because she's offering one to Walter.
Right, at no charge.
So this is definitely not helping the situation.
No.
And part of the problem is Edna doesn't realize what financial trouble they're in. Maybe she would stop giving things away for free if he told her how dire their situation is.
Right. Walter says he's just there to help his daughter and suggests that they should just let the past be the past. And yeah, I don't really buy anything that Walter is selling. He just comes off as, although he seems like a decent guy, he also seems like he's very, very insincere.
He's arrogant. And, he probably is a good person helper because he's the exact same type of doctor she is. He's been through probably lots of times. So he has good things to tell her. But Yeah, just showing up here out of the blue and acting like you should be welcomed with open arms was probably a little presumptuous.
Right, especially from what we learn later.
Yeah.
That, so I'll get into that later. I'll talk about that later.
Okay.
Rob goes into the store angry. Into the diner.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's where I lose a little bit of sympathy for Rob. I get that he's angry, but this is his business.
Right.
Sydney is serving customers in his business. Yep. This is not the way to do this. Like, he needs to swallow his anger a little bit, let her serve her customers, and then go quietly somewhere else.
In private.
Right.
Yeah.
And then express his anger.
He completely tells her off for keeping Finn's situation from him.
And his anger is deserved.
Yeah.
He's absolutely right to be angry.
She should have told him.
Right.
She should have told him. But also, again, I will say, she says, well, I handled it. And he was like, you shouldn't have handled it. Well, she did have to handle it because you weren't there.
Right.
She just should have told you about how she handled it. Not that, you should be upset with her for handling it.
Right.
There's all kinds of layers to this.
Right.
And the same thing that's happening over at the camp is we are not communicating now within the Shandon family.
Like I said, in this situation, I just feel like everybody is wrong.
Yeah.
In one way or another, everybody here is wrong in their actions.
Yeah.
So it's one of those situations where I'm not really siding with everybody because I feel like everybody is in the wrong. All right, so Walter and Maggie walk talking about the lawsuit situation. She doesn't want to disappoint him, which he says would never happen. And he seems like he's a good dude. But that impression will not last for me for the entire episode. By the time we get to the end of the episode, my opinion of him is flipped quite a bit.
Yeah. She talks about how she made his life miserable when he first started dating her mom.
Yeah.
And also about how she first saw him working in the hospital. And this is when she decided she also wanted to be a surgeon. We can see the picture, right, of how they started kind of at odds with each other. And then their relationship grew. And he's been the father figure in her life for most of her life. And you can really see that. She looks up to him. She always has once she got past that initial
awkwardness.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she became a doctor because she saw her stepdad at work. And Walter says the control is the key to happiness.
Yeah, and again, as you already mentioned, this is direct opposition to the advice that Frank gave her earlier.
Right. Sully goes to see Mr. Phillips.
Yeah, and that's that second bank guy that he had left the message with last episode.
They end up getting into a heated conversation, and this takes care of the problem I had at the end of last episode. Like, if you have a loan, an outstanding one, where you're behind on payments, how are you going to go to another bank and open up a line of credit? Well, the answer is you're not gonna, because Mr. Phillips has no interest in helping him.
Mr. Phillips flat out told him, I'm not going to give you a loan because you have such a high balance with another bank. Come back and let me know once you've paid that off, and then we can talk. Right.
Of course, by that point, you won't need it.
Right.
So we end up having a conversation with Rory and Cal. Rory, well, I can't pronounce his name for some reason, learned how to play chess in prison.
His name is Roy. I'm like, where are you?
Well, maybe that's why I can't pronounce his name, because it's not even the right name. It's not even the right name.
Before you get there, I just want to say one more thing about the banker. Okay. He suggested that Sully should consider developing his land.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And the other banker, whose name I'm forgetting right now, had said something similar. He had suggested that he sell the camp outright. This banker, Mr. Phillips, is at least offering a slightly different suggestion, saying you develop the land. And, I wonder if there's not some merit to that. Because this goes back to my question about the geography of this place. How much land does Sully actually own? And are you utilizing this land properly?
I mean, it's possible that you can still keep Sullivan's Crossing open.
Sullivan's Crossing.
While also developing the land.
Even if you don't sell it, maybe you can lease some of the land. And maybe you can even lease it to businesses that would help monetize Sullivan's Crossing instead of, I'm sure he's worried about, paving it and putting up paradise, paving paradise and putting up parking lot.
Right.
But there's ways you can utilize land.
Right.
Other than just, high rises. There's got to be like other businesses. You know what I'm saying? Like,
we get the sense here that Sully is not really a very good businessman. when it comes down to it.
Yeah. Yeah, he could use some help.
Mm-hmm.
And I do feel like there is probably opportunities to just use this land for better resources to help bring money into the camp. Like maybe renting it out to film crews. I hear that's pretty big in Nova Scotia.
Yeah, what do you know? Maybe they can film a show called Sullivan's Crossing on there.
Ooh.
I think I would watch that.
Okay, so yeah, let's go back where you were. So Cal is with Roy, not Rory.
Yeah, and I later on say, Roy in my notes. For some reason I wrote, and I think Rory was actually a character in Gilmore Girls. Yes.
Gilmore Girls, yes.
Yes. Okay, so he learned to play chess in prison. He was in prison for 2 years for a crime he didn't commit, which I think was 3 years for a crime he didn't commit. And I believe this was a robbery.
Yeah, he was just literally in the wrong place at the wrong time, and nobody believed him. So he got sentenced along with the people who he just happened to be with at that moment that he didn't even know that really had committed the crime.
He met his wife in the aftermath of this. And here's where we learn that Cal, his wife, is dead.
Yeah, his wife, what was her name?
I didn't quite put it down.
Yeah, I don't have her name here. Lynn?
That sounds right.
I think her name is Lynn. We learned by Cal telling Roy that she died a few years ago, and they talk about that, and Roy tells Cal that there's still time for his second chance.
Right. I mean, he's only like 40 years old, maybe 30. We don't actually know how old he is in the universe. The actor himself is in his 40s, but we don't actually know how old the character itself is. So, yeah, Roy says he's young enough to give it another shot. And
clearly we know who the production is leading us to think he should be with.
Yep. Walter says, okay, so we cut to Walter. He takes his leave of his stepdaughter, that it's all about control in regards to deposition.
Yeah, they say goodnight, which I thought was really weird, because isn't it the middle of the day?
Yeah.
You're not going to see each other the rest of the night? He's just going to go sit in his cabin by himself?
I mean, maybe. Maybe he's just waiting for Sully to come and punch him. So Sully ends up going to a bar. He orders a drink.
He orders a double whiskey on the rocks.
And he has a memory of meeting his ex-wife.
Yeah, and in this same bar, he has a meeting with Phoebe, and I think they did a great job, with costuming and makeup and whatever. They both looked significantly younger in this shot. It was done so beautifully. And
at this point, he had gotten sober, and he was drinking a club soda.
Yeah, at that point, it was he had been 6 months sober, and he's having a meeting with Phoebe, and he asks to see Maggie. So it's been some time since he's seen his daughter. And Phoebe says that's not why she's here. She came to tell him that she is getting remarried.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he points out, oh, it's just ginger ale in my glass, and she's kind of side-eyeing it, I take that as confirmation that Sully's drinking was a contributing factor to their split up.
I'm sure, but I do have some follow-up questions on that. All right, so I'm kind of curious, because there's no other reason for her to take the actions that she does, unless he was also an abusive drunk.
Well, I mean,
if he was a garden variety drunk,
there's other reasons. We don't know what happened between them, why they split up, but I remember we were questioning.
Split up isn't necessarily my problem. Is it necessary?
Is it keeping her
right?
From
Yeah.
Which we learned that wasn't necessarily her idea.
Yes, and that's another thing that I will definitely comment on.
So there's definitely some holes in the story that we're still going to get filled in on, I'm sure. But I remember we had been kind of questioning, well, did he start drinking because Maggie left?
Right.
Because of something with another child?
Right.
Or was this already a problem?
And it seems to be that it was a problem.
It was already a problem.
Right.
When they were still married and together. And I don't think I saw any hints this episode leading us to thinking there's another child. That's something we've been tossing around for quite a while now.
Yeah, no, it seems to be that all the hints are, in this episode, it seems to be just geared towards Sully losing Maggie, which doesn't totally make sense with everything that we've been getting here.
Yeah.
But, whatever.
Okay, so still in the past, in this memory, after Phoebe leaves, he's crushed by this news that she's moving on, he orders a double
well,
whiskey.
Not only that she's moving on, but she is still denying him the right to see his child.
Right.
Now,
she's moving on and giving Maggie a new father.
Right. Now, what is to stop Sully from going to the courts and trying to get some custody here?
Sure. Also, though, they're living in different countries.
Right.
That makes things more complicated, I'm sure.
Yeah. All right, so he starts drinking again.
Yeah, he broke that 6-month sobriety that he had. And I noted that the ginger ale that he had on the table and the whiskey were served in the same type of glass. Usually, that from my experience, bars serve soda in a completely different type of glass than alcohol. And that's their cue to know who's has alcohol in their hands and who doesn't. I've never seen them served in the same cup like that.
Meanwhile, present-day Sully doesn't take the drink.
He doesn't. After having this memory, he puts a $20 bill on top of the drink and he leaves.
And
without
again,
having any.
And again, you have to wonder, why exactly does Sully have money problems?
Right? Because how much was that drink? I mean, could have been $13 maybe, but it wasn't 20.
Right.
You could have at least asked how much it was.
Maggie gets a call from Sydney.
I'm sorry. Yep, I keep cutting you off, but I have some things to say about this bar.
Okay.
Because I don't know where this bar is meant to be in relation to Shandon's, but I did some digging and I figured out where the real life filming location was. Okay. So, in real life, the filming location is actually just across the street from the Hallie Deli where Shannon's is filmed. And it's in a place called the Brown Hound Pub. And I figured this out because when you're watching the scene and you look out the door, you can see across the street the sign in the window for Luke's Small Goods. Now, Luke's Small Goods is a business that sits next to the Hallie Deli, and it's a charcuterie. They serve sandwiches and things like that, which is interesting in itself because they seem like competition for the Hallie Deli in real life.
Yeah.
I found it ironic that this place is called Luke's because that is the name, of course, for both Chad Michael Murray and Scott Patterson's famous CW roles. They were both named Luke. Yeah. And we can see that name out the door there, Luke's. That's a real business, so I don't think that's, the set did that, but I feel like it's just a little bit of irony. And I think it's double ironic because I'm sitting here wondering, is this bar competition for Shandon's? Because we got the impression before Shandon's is the only place in town to go for nightlife. And we have another bar right here where, Sully's going here on purpose because he doesn't want Shannon's to know he's potentially drinking. Right. He's intentionally going somewhere different.
He's trying to go somewhere where nobody will know him.
Yeah. And also, he went to the same place. So maybe he already had that memory in his head. And that's why he went here. This is where he broke his sobriety before. But yeah, I looked up this actual place, the Brown Hound, and it looked delicious. They serve, looks like amazing food there. And I want to eat at all of these places now. The Hallie Deli, the Brown Hound, Luke's Small Goods. They all look super amazing.
Yeah, you're kind of reminding me that I haven't eaten dinner yet. So
yeah, I don't know. This show always seems to make me hungry.
All right, so Maggie gets a call from Sydney, who's mad at her for basically spilling the beans about Ben. And again, Sydney shouldn't have been keeping this secret in the first place, so I have absolutely no sympathy for her whatsoever. Even though, yes, Maggie was a dope for saying anything in the first place. But again, the wrong originates with Sydney.
Yeah, so now they're just all mad at each other.
Right. Maggie ends up wandering by. I think she's walking by Cal's.
Actually, no, he's on her porch waiting for her. So this is Sully's porch. She's going home after saying goodnight to Walter.
Okay. And he ends up giving Maggie an explanation and telling her about his dead wife, which he died from ALS, and which he says is a terrible disease.
And they have this conversation over some tequila, which Cal had brought, because he knows Maggie likes tequila. That's been established.
Right.
And he pours them each a glass. It's the same whiskey glass that we saw in that flashback.
Right? Whoa, okay.
They got the same glasses here, and he poured them each some. So they're sharing a drink and talking about Lynn. And, he says it was after her death that he took a leave of absence from his legal practice. And Lynn always loved the outdoors. She would have loved Sullivan's Crossing. And it was a nice tender moment where he finally opened up and they shared something, you know?
Yeah. So we cut to Sully and Walter, who are having a major confrontation.
Yeah, Sully went to VIP Cabin 3 to tell off Walter.
Right.
He didn't take the drink, but instead he goes to give Walter a piece of his mind.
So Sully ends up kicking him out, and Walter baits him some more and reveals that he was the one that convinced his ex to keep Maggie away from him. She saw his way eventually that he was a drunken loser, and this eventually results in Sully punching him and possibly breaking his nose. Actually, he says later that he did.
Yeah.
And exactly as Walter wanted and probably planned. Oh, I'm not done with that, but so yeah. All right. I have some major things to say here.
Okay, let's have it.
This made me lose all respect for Walter. The lowest thing you can do is go after somebody's kids, to take another man's kids away from them. Like, unless he was abusive, like if he was an abusive drunk, we're talking a different story. But then again, we're also kind of, making it so that we can't have any sympathy for Sully. So I don't think they're going to go in that direction. But yeah, I mean, like, unless he was like an abusive drunk who like beat the shit out of his kid, like, there is no reason for this. There is no reason why he couldn't have had a relationship with his daughter. And it is not Walter's place to convince the wife to not let,
Right. We're definitely given the impression here that Phoebe wanted to let him still have a relationship with Maggie.
And the fact that Walter basically put the kibosh on this makes me lose any and all respect for him.
It shows he is a controlling partner.
Right.
And he wanted complete control over Phoebe and Maggie right from the start.
Right. And this right here, like, I'm a father, a single father, a divorced father who doesn't live with a kid. This right here makes me completely despise Walter based on these actions.
Yeah, well, I don't think we were ever supposed to like him.
No, but, I mean, I could sort of see the goodness in him before this, but now completely no.
And the fact that he's pushing all of this in Sully's face.
Right.
After saying, I'm here because we're all on Maggie's side. We're all on the same team.
Right.
Well, you're clearly not. You're trying to show some superiority over him.
So
in his home.
It's not bad enough that you denied him seeing his daughter and losing all that time with her, but you're showing up here to potentially ruin the reconciliation.
Right.
That's just completely wrong. It makes him a morally reprehensible character. And there's nothing that he can do from here on out that would redeem him in my eyes.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah.
Yeah, so Walter goes and interrupts Maggie and Cal's moment, holding his broken nose covered in blood. He says he can't stay here another minute. He's headed to the airport.
Right. So he's not going to go to a hospital first?
Yeah, Maggie says, let's go to the hospital. And he says, nope, I'm leaving. She says, well, you can't go alone. Let me pack. I'm going to come with you. So she's getting on an airplane and going back to Boston.
So she goes to her room to pack. Yeah, first call ends up giving her his number.
Cal gives Maggie his phone number, says, call me if you need anything. Let me know how the deposition goes. Didn't she already have his number? I could have swore we've seen them talk on the phone before.
I actually don't recall a scene of them talking on the phone.
Well, you'd think they would have exchanged numbers, like that they're both working here and like there's no emergency services.
Right. Yeah, I would think they would have their numbers, but, whatever. Sully ends up coming into Maggie's room and apologizes. Maggie doesn't want to hear him.
Yeah, he genuinely looks sorry.
Right. Sully tries to say, he'll make it right. You should have heard the things that he was saying to me.
He begs her to stay.
And this is more caring that we've seen Sully demonstrate for Maggie in the entire 5 episodes up to this point.
Now, he realizes he screwed up by punching Walter. He
Right.
realizes he took the bait he shouldn't have.
Exactly. And that's a direct parallel to what Cal was saying earlier to Maggie.
Right.
Don't take the bait. Unfortunately, Sully does. He basically gave Walter what he wanted, basically.
But ultimately, she ends up leaving with Walter. They get in a cab. He again insists on not going to the hospital. He's going straight to the airport because
he wants to see he
needs a proper plastic surgeon.
You don't want to stop that bleeding first?
Apparently thinks he can only get medical care in Boston. He has no confidence in the hospitals here. Yeah, shouldn't you get it to stop bleeding? Maybe change out of those bloody clothes before trying to get on a plane. I can't picture this going well at airport security.
Right. Would they even let you on the plane in this state?
You're covered in blood. You're holding your injured face in your hand, and you're like, customs, I'm going to get on a plane and go to a different country.
How about rising to, like, you know, the level of the, you know, if you go in the air, the air pressure. Like the pressure that you have when you...
Yeah, that doesn't sound good for a broken nose,
does it? I wouldn't think it would. So I have in my notes that Walter is in the cat, but he's not in the cat. He's in the car. But I just found that really funny. Sully tries to get her to stop. We see flashes of Maggie being dragged away by his soon-to-be ex-wife.
Yeah, of young Maggie.
And they're running. So, is this a suggestion that maybe Sully was abusive here? I mean, nothing indicates that whatsoever. So I don't know that this is even, like... Is it really necessary to run away like this? Yeah,
Maggie is pleading, saying, I don't want to leave. I want to stay with Dad. Phoebe literally picks her up, puts her in the cab. You know, I'm glad to see that it's easier to get a cab here than it is to get an ambulance.
Yeah, yeah.
So this past scene, and again, it's Sully having these, like, flashbacks. The past scene with the cab is perfectly mirroring Maggie now intentionally getting into the cab and again leaving him, pulling away from the house.
Both Sullys in both time frames are despondent, and again, present day Sully is tempted to drink. This time, he gives in.
Yep, he goes inside, he finds the discarded glasses and the bottle of tequila. He begins to dump them. I'm thinking Cal probably wants that full bottle of tequila back that he brought over.
Yeah, but he's not going to get that chance.
But then he takes a drink.
And that is where the episode ends.
It looks like Frank was right to worry about Sully's sobriety.
Yeah, I mean, you know, given everything that the pressure that he's been under recently.
Pressure drop.
Yeah, that's the meaning of the title for this one. Yeah, so Sully's sobriety is over for the time being. Where it's going to be interesting to see where this goes.
Yeah, so we're going to, I'm sure, see him climb back out of that hole. Obviously, Maggie's going to come back, right? We don't just, like, leave Sullivan's Crossing halfway through Sullivan's Crossing.
Right.
I can't imagine she's just, like, hangs out in Boston for the rest of the season. But I'm guessing she's going to stay in Boston for the deposition. Again, I didn't see the trailer for the next episode. But I assume she's going to have the deposition and then head back.
Yeah.
To reunite with Cal and to help Sully with his sobriety, and everybody's gonna make nice. Maybe not Walter and Sully. But...
No, I don't think that's ever gonna happen. And me and Walter are never gonna be good either.
You're done with Walter.
Yes, I am.
You gonna send Rob after him?
Maybe. You know, with the bat, the baseball bat. When I say you're done, you're done.
You're done at Sullivan's Crossing.
Right.
Walter, get out of here.
Right.
And of course, we still have some fundraising to do, and we got to come up with some creative ways to save this business. I'm all for it. Let's start a Kickstarter.
All right, let's do it. You know, we could get Deborah Pratt back on the phone, and who we just interviewed, by the way, the creator of Quantum Leap, and she could tell us how to do a Kickstarter for Sullivan's Crossing for that campground.
Yeah, we'll put a Kickstarter for the new business that we're going to develop on the side of the campground and the rest of Sully's land, and we'll give out some great Sullivan's Crossing hats and cups as
you know how I could see
rewards?
The season ending? That they get the money by creating a TV show.
Ooh.
And this whole thing is the origin story of that TV show.
I wouldn't hate it.
No. All right, Stacie, you have anything else to say about this episode?
No, I think we got it.
Yeah, I think like I said, I think this is probably one of the strongest episodes of the season. Definitely the most cohesive and coherent. It's a story that runs pretty well all the way through, as opposed to say something like last week. All right, so anyway, we would like your thoughts. Stacie can be reached at.
I can be reached on Twitter, X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can follow one of my Corn Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Corn Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as ourselves. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to our channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Corn Productions, signing off.